good love. All right, so let me just listen for a moment because I'm wrapping up. Super fun. Anyone have a comment so far? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, just on that one, because I guess my thinking is that, perfect love casts out fear. Well, obviously I don't have perfect love, so I can't cast out anyone's fear. So that's kind of like so it's like, okay, only God can cast out anyone's fear. I can't. So it's sort of like, almost like a defeating statement. Whereas I guess saying healthy love casts out fear. Well, maybe I can get involved in that.
Yeah.
Maybe I can help be one of the operators that casts out people's fear.
Right.
Which is a
big deal.
Wow.
Yeah, right? Huge. So huge. Yay. So, great ways to communicate. This is going to be familiar to all of you. What are the kinds of statements that communicate our own needs? Are they you statements or I statements?
You.
Right? This has been our problem. So we're all pretty familiar with this I statements. And I love how Danny covers this, so you can definitely reference the book in this. But I statements, ready, feel. So I'm going to have you put this up. Feel is what speaks to needs. Now there are many people who are high thinkers, and that is the way you process information, is by thinking. The only challenge is when you're talking about relationship and intimacy, it's important that you move out of the thinking place and start to identify feelings. Feelings and needs, not thinking, because thinking is about assessment. So I feel this when this happens. And you actually have to figure out how you feel, which means you get to go right up against the very things that you missed out on, which was having a parent who allowed you to have feelings and allowed you to be your own person rather than an extension of them. Because those of us who grew up in an environment where we were only an extension of somebody else's being were never allowed to own our own emotional responses. And so we have shut them down. So we get to, and we are required to, in healthy relationships and intimacy, we are now required to identify how we feel. I feel this when this happens. You are now expressing, and that's a big deal. I feel what when this happens. If you find yourself saying, I feel like, you have now stepped out of vulnerability and into a thinking statement. I feel scared. I feel loved. I feel honored. I felt loved, honored, and appreciated when you called me and made a joke about how horrible it was that I didn't have the stadium seats. Okay, somebody had a comment? Yes?
Yeah, I just would like to, this just shows how not healthy my family was. But I learned this principle a long time ago.
Right.
And I made a really big effort to use this principle, to live this principle. And eventually, the response I got from the other person in my environment was, your feelings are a lie. And so it was a way of shutting me down so that I wouldn't use I statements about how things made me feel. So I'm just wanting to address that there is a particular way of talking even amongst the Christian church that says that you can't trust your feelings and that your feelings are lies. So I just would like to empower people to know that that is not how that feelings were created in order to give us an access to our vulnerability and intimacy.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So when we communicate this, and it may not even be with someone else, it may be even with ourselves. We don't have to go to everyone else. We sometimes need a moment to process ourselves and process with the Lord. What this statement will reveal is two things. One thing, but it is, whose problem is it? Whose problem is it? Because you're feeling like, for example, for someone who is very wounded and has been non-accepted, my observation becomes your criticism. To a wounded person, a regular observation will become a criticism. It does not mean that the other person is criticizing them. Whose problem is it? It's both. One, the person who's making an observation can become aware of the tendency for that person to be criticized, and it is also the problem of the person who takes every observation as a criticism. Both are responsible. The person who feels this is actually now owning their own reaction to what happened. And we get to become responsible and healthy for our own responses. And we also get to share them relationally and intimately with another person. Greg and I just had a recent huge breakthrough on an area of our lives that we have been challenged with forever. And it has to do with ways that he helps me out with things. But we had a disconnect that was continually causing disruption in our intimacy and our trust. And we just recently uncovered which piece of it is whose, and that has clarified so much. So I was trying to take responsibility for something that wasn't mine. He was trying to take responsibility for something that wasn't his. And in our desire to give to each other too much, we had actually landed in unhealthiness. Isn't that interesting? So this will reveal whose problem it is. Yeah, Carrie. And then I'm going to finish.
This is something that I really struggle with when someone else is sharing. I feel this when this, and I am one that has shut people down. I know, just because I feel so uncomfortable on the inside for those feelings. So what I'm hearing is when that uncomfortability of somebody's feelings come up, just kind of,
Right.
Holy
What do you
Spirit,
do?
why? So why am I feeling this, Lord? What's this about for me? Because I know it's my, now, there's something that is triggering in me, not able to fix someone or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then just step back and just, I guess the to and fro with things like this, when someone shares that and then it pulls a feeling out in me, then I want to be able to share that, but then a lot of times that makes the other person feel that I haven't heard them.
Right.
So like stopping and just say, I hear that you say that you feel this when this happens, like restating what they feel rather than trying to immediately, that give take in that is confusing to me a little bit.
Well, it's super confusing overall. So let's see if we can't unwrap that for just a moment, which is, what happens to many of us when we hear somebody share their negative response to something we're doing? What is our initial reaction? Yeah, that was my fault. I now need to fix that for you.
Yep.
Guess what? I'm not responsible for your emotional responses. I do get to hear your need and respond to that. So that reaction of it's my fault and I need to fix that is the result of an unhealthy upbringing where everybody else's, I'm not allowed to own my own, I now have to take on yours. So what we both get to do is go, so this is your reaction, whose problem is this? Is it partly yours, partly mine? Let's ask, what does this mean, Lord? What shall we do? What does this mean? What shall we do? Because what we often think is that if I share with you my reaction to your behavior, it is automatically the other person's responsibility to fix it. It may not be. Or how about this? What if when you share, when you leave your laundry out, it makes me feel devalued? So you get to respond to that. One is you can honor their thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that you feel devalued in our relationship. I don't want you to feel devalued. I have an illness which causes me to be unable to pick up clothing after myself. I am unable to meet your need. What can we do together to get your value back and to have this action either no longer devalue or solve the action? See, we have two ways to approach this, and many of us, because we weren't allowed to own our own responses, we automatically think, now it's my job to fix yours.
Yeah.
when it's not. It's ours together to come up with a solution that meets the actual need. The need is not for the clothing to be picked up. The need is to be valued. And together, and some people will say, when you are addicted to drugs, or I feel unsafe and scared when you are using drugs. We'll throw that as an example. Well, the person's response is, I'm so sorry that you feel unsafe and scared when I am using drugs. I am unable to change that right now. Then you have bigger conversations to have. So many of us lie to ourselves and lie to other people about what we are going to do to meet the need. And what does that do? It ruins trust and intimacy. So what if we were together able to come up with, I care about your here, but I may not be able to solve here. Or I care about here and together we can solve here. I care about here and I can totally do here. That's what creates trust. That's what creates intimacy. Hearing the response and then together coming up with a solution. Super good, right? So, first step that you can take when somebody is sharing an I feel statement is you can honor their vulnerability and honor and allow them to have their own reaction. Release yourself from your need from them to have a different reaction to you. That is a big, big deal. I don't want Greg to ever have a negative emotion towards me, but occasionally he does. I have to release myself from my need to be perfect for him so that he is free to actually have his own emotional responses. If I have to control and manipulate that, how free is he to be his own person? Never. Woo, so good. Okay. 2, be powerful. So 1, honor the vulnerability. 2, be powerful enough to make the adjustment, or be able to be powerful enough to honestly assess that you cannot make the adjustment. And what does that mean for your relationship? So at a certain season of our marriage, neither Greg and I were able to stop exploding on each other verbally. Neither one of us liked how that made us feel. But we both acknowledged that we were not in a place where we were able to stop it. So when we agreed that exploding was not about the other person, it was about our own inability, we stopped having it mean this. I stopped being devalued because I realized that it wasn't about me. Right? Now you can have, doesn't mean that the behavior doesn't need to change. It does need to change, but it's not about me. I'm not being devalued. This is a person struggling with their own issue that doesn't have everything to do with me. How good, right? It's so good. Because it helps us then be able to move forward from there. What can I now do to help you shift this behavior that's wrecking both of us? What can you do to help me to shift this behavior that's wrecking both of us? So good. Yay! Okay, we're wrapping. I'm going to flip the board. We were made to be trustworthy. We were made to be intimate. We were made to be relationally connected. We were made to be able to access the whole range of our emotion and be able to communicate it to ourselves and to other people. We were made to be healers of hurts. We were made to have healthy love. That's who we are. That's what God's growing us up in. Yay! Okay. Kids are going to come in. Jared's going to come up and share with us and help us walk in our listening with God. So do you want someone with you, or are you going to be a single
Sure. Who wants
single
to be
man?